Okay, so you know those portraits of characters that get shown when they're talking in old school RPG games? Yeah, those ones? Well, here's some tips on how to make them. Greetings everyone, Eric here, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're doing some pixel art. What's pixel art? This is pixel art. I know that's not much of an explanation, but I'll leave a link to a site that better explains it in detail. Once you've got your knowledge, we gotta start with what software. Here I'm using Sprite. It costs $20 on Steam and is amazing! Specifically designed for doing pixel art for games and such, even letting you do animations. If you want free options, Pixel Edit is also really good, but you can easily use stuff like Paint.net, GIMP, Krita, or even stuff like Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint. Use what you got. To start out with, we need to pick our image size. A good standard in a lot of games is an image that is 32 pixels by 32 pixels in size. This gives you about the minimum amount of room needed to get some detail in and keep things looking coherent and readable. Next, you'll want your color palette. In Sprite, you can actually just set a color palette by selecting one of many palettes it has. These are all based on color sets from popular computer systems, some consoles, all that sort. You can also import your own from an image. Here's a site with tons. Find the one that has the colors you really like and grab it. Try to limit yourself somewhat, as these limitations help you get creative with where you place what color to get the best result with less. Here's the image I'm going to be using as reference. I drew this face as practice for reviewing the Huion Canvas Pro 16, which you can check out that review if you would like. The first step I like to do is to block out some of the major shapes. Just use a flat color, normally the base color, to mark out the shape of the head. Obviously, I'm working at limited resolution, so this shape won't be exactly like the original piece, but all we want is to get close enough to sell the viewer on what they are seeing. Take care with the pattern of pixels around the edges of things. For instance, on the face, in order to make it look a little less awkward, the bottom bit goes 3 pixels, then 2 lines of 4 pixels, then 1 line of 2 pixels. This gives me the angle I need, but doesn't look jarring as if there was a random single pixel in between them. This takes time to get the hang of, but look at lots of references and you'll begin to pick up these patterns that produce smooth transitions without getting janky. Now you could go in and outline some areas with black lines, like I would do in the original. But at this scale, it can come off a bit weird and leave you a bit less room for shading later on. So a good rule of thumb is to take the base color and adjust it to what would be the darkest shade you want to use. For the skin, I ended up using these 4 colors, the base color and 3 shades. At first, I used different colors, but I changed this later to the ones I just showed you. Your individual style will change how many shade colors, or if any, you'll be using. So experiment and play around with different looks. Reference your favorite artists and games and pick up on some cool tricks, then just try out your own ideas. And also, I know I said I'm not using black lines here, but if you want to outline things using just straight black lines, just go ahead. It's just experiment with different ideas. The rest of the drawing pretty much follows the same formula. I rough things out, then slowly add in more detail with different shades of color, and adjusting as I go to make things look proportionally how I want them, and not be too janky looking with the edges. Even with the eyes, it's super simple. 3 colors to give the illusion of shading, even using the darkest color to give the impression of the pupil at distance without having to use a black dot. The eyelids are an even darker shade of the skin. This not only shows the outline of the eye, but also gives a bit of shading while only taking up 1 pixel's worth of width. For For some of the details, you'll notice I mix some of the dark and light colors to suggest the idea of things like the nose, the mouth, and the ears detail. Nothing is supposed to be exact. I just want to make it so when you see the image at around its actual size in-game, you can easily pick up what that's supposed to be. His hair is black, so I only used 2 colors for it. Black for the bulk amount, and then a dark blue to add some basic highlights and detail lines. Same is done with the eyebrows. Here is the final piece. I added the blue background and adjusted the ear to have the matching colors. The image here is scaled up to about 512 by 512 pixels. Scaling is tricky, as you want to make sure it's in even multiples to prevent pixels from getting weird. I tend to use multiples of the resolution, meaning 32. Also, in the software, make sure it's set to nearest neighbor when scaling, which will preserve the hard edges of the pixels. If you use other options, it can distort or attempt to blur some of the pixels in a way that looks weird. Here's the final image and the original image side by side. As you can see, I managed to capture the overall look of the original image, even if I was limited on how much detail I could use. If I wanted to get a bit more detail involved, I could have drawn the face a bit more zoomed in than the original, or simply worked at a higher resolution like 64 by 64 pixels to allow me a bit more detail. It all comes down to the exact look you're going for. I hope this was helpful. I'll have links below to some of the stuff I've talked about in this video, as well as all of my social media stuff. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share. And if you'd like to keep up with more of my content, hit the subscribe button and that bell notification to stay up to date. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Later!